We need about $25,000 per year for each of them, my mom said. I owe you nothing, I replied. 3 months later, my stepsister asked to meet me in person. I'm 32 now, but my story begins when I was 16, and my world collapsed around me. Today, I run my own software development company with 30 employees and offices in 3 cities. I've built a life I'm proud of, brick by painful brick. I never expected my mother to reappear after 16 years of silence, especially not to demand tens of thousands of dollars for the children she chose over me. Until I was 12, it was just my mother, Victoria, and me in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment. We struggled financially, but we had each other. Mom worked 2 jobs to keep us afloat, and I learned early to be self-sufficient. I cooked simple meals, did my homework without being told, and tried to be the least troublesome kid possible. I knew how hard she worked, and I loved her fiercely for it. Everything changed when she met Robert. He had a good job as a construction manager, owned his own home, and drove a new truck. He seemed nice enough at first, though he never really tried to connect with me. I was cautiously optimistic that our lives might get easier. 6 months after they started dating, Mom announced they were getting married, and we moved into Robert's house. A month after the wedding, Mom shared the news that she was pregnant. I was 13 by then, and while I felt a twinge of uncertainty, I tried to be happy for her. She glowed with excitement, decorating the nursery and talking endlessly about the baby. Robert became more present, more engaged, but never with me. His eyes would slide past me at the dinner table as if I were a piece of furniture rather than a person. The first noticeable shift came when Mom stopped attending my school events. My band concert, my debate team finals. She was too tired from the pregnancy. I understood or tried to. But when Robert complained about the cost of my school activities, suggesting they were an unnecessary expense with a baby on the way, Mom didn't defend me. She just looked down at her swollen belly and changed the subject. Grace was born when I was 14, a colicky, demanding baby who consumed every ounce of Mom's attention. I pitched in, learning to change diapers and warm bottles, hopping to ease Mom's exhaustion and maybe earn back some of her focus. Instead, Robert began commenting on how much it cost to support someone else's kid. Mom never contradicted him. When I was 15, Mom announced she was pregnant again. By then, I was working weekends at a local grocery store using my earnings for my own clothes and school supplies. I handed over half my paycheck to help with household expenses, thinking it might make Robert see me as less of a burden. It didn't. Jackson arrived just before my 16th birthday. We'd moved to a larger house by then, but somehow I ended up with the smallest bedroom, little more than a converted office space. My old furniture didn't fit, so I slept on a futon while Grace and Jackson got matching bedroom sets for their spacious rooms. When I mentioned the disparity, Mom told me I should be grateful to have my own space at all. The breaking point came 3 months after Jackson's birth. I overheard Robert telling Mom they should use my college fund, money my grandparents had been adding to since my birth, for a kitchen renovation. Something inside me cracked at her casual dismissal of my future. When I confronted her, her eyes hardened in a way I'd never seen before. "You've never been grateful for anything Robert has done for you," she said, her voice flat. "He's right about you." 2 weeks later, they sat me down for what they called a family meeting. Robert did most of the talking, explaining how expensive it was to raise 3 children, how the babies needed more space and resources. "You're practically an adult now," he said while Mom stared at the kitchen table. "You need to learn independence." Mom finally looked up. "We've talked to your grandparents. They've agreed to take you in. We need to focus on Grace and Jackson now. They're just little and need us more." I had 2 weeks to pack my things and leave the only home I'd known for the past 4 years. My grandparents, my biological father's parents, were stunned when I called them. They'd been told I was having trouble adjusting and needed a more structured environment. The truth left them speechless. Within hours, they'd arranged to pick me up that weekend, unwilling to leave me in that house a moment longer than necessary. My Aunt Sophia, my father's sister, drove 5 hours to help me move. She cried when she saw how few boxes contained my life. Mom maintained her distance during the move, offering hollow platitudes about how this is for the best, and you'll understand someday. Robert made no pretense of regret. He carried my futon to the truck with barely concealed satisfaction. The day I left, Mom hugged me stiffly and said she'd call soon. She never did. My grandparents welcomed me with open arms and genuine love, but the adjustment was brutal. I had nightmares for months, reliving the moment Mom chose her new family over me. I threw myself into schoolwork and my job at the local hardware store, determined to need as little financial help as possible. My grandparents insisted on paying for my necessities, but I covered everything else, saving whatever I could for college. Therapy helped me process the abandonment, though the wound never fully healed. My therapist helped me understand that Mom's choices reflected her weaknesses, not my worth. Slowly, I rebuilt my sense of self. My grandparents and Aunt Sophia became my foundation, showing me what unconditional love actually looked like. I graduated high school near the top of my class and earned a partial scholarship to a state university studying computer science. I worked 30 hours a week throughout college, taking summer classes to graduate early. My professors became mentors, impressed by my drive. One connected me with an internship that turned into my first real job after graduation. I advanced quickly, working longer hours than anyone else, taking on the projects no one wanted. By 25, I was leading a development team. By 27, I had enough industry connections and savings to launch my own company. The venture succeeded beyond my expectations, growing from 3 employees to 30 in just 2 years. Throughout those 16 years, I received no contact from my mother or Robert. Through extended family, I occasionally heard updates about Grace and Jackson, their school achievements, their hobbies, their apparent happiness. I felt nothing beyond a vague curiosity, like hearing about distant cousins rather than half-siblings. Then on an ordinary Tuesday, an email arrived from an address I hadn't seen in 16 years, victoriamartin@email.com. The subject line read simply, "Reconnecting." The message was bizarrely casual, as if we'd simply lost touch rather than her abandoning me. She mentioned hearing about my business success and said she had family matters to discuss. She suggested meeting for coffee that weekend. I stared at the screen for nearly an hour, emotions cycling through me like a hurricane. Curiosity, anger, a childish flicker of hope. I forwarded the email to my therapist, who suggested that closure might come from hearing what she had to say, provided I met her on my terms in a public place with clear boundaries. After 3 days of internal debate, I replied with a brief agreement to meet at a coffee shop near my office, neutral territory where I could easily leave if necessary. Seeing her after 16 years was surreal. She'd aged significantly. Her once dark hair now streaked with gray lines etching her face that hadn't been there before. Robert sat beside her, heavier and balder than I remembered, his expression guarded. I'd expected to feel an emotional tidal wave, but instead found a strange detachment, as if I were meeting distant acquaintances rather than the woman who gave birth to me. Mom hugged me awkwardly while Robert extended a stiff hand. They commented on how well I looked, how impressed they were with my accomplishments. Mom spoke as if our separation had been a mutual decision, a normal launching of an independent child rather than a traumatic abandonment. After 15 minutes of shallow conversation about the weather and local news, Mom finally reached the purpose of our meeting. "Your sister and brother are heading to college next year," she said, her tone shifting to something more familiar. The voice she'd used when asking neighbors for favors. "Grace got into Cornell and Jackson's going to NYU. We're so proud." Robert leaned forward. "College isn't cheap these days. The housing alone at these schools is astronomical." "We've heard about your success," Mom continued, her eyes not quite meeting mine. "The business is doing very well from what we understand." I remained silent, watching the performance unfold. "We think it's only fair you help with their tuition," she finally said. "They're your siblings after all, and family helps family." Robert nodded vigorously. "We need about $25,000 per year for each of them. We'll need the first payment by August." The audacity stunned me into momentary silence. 16 years without a single call, message, or birthday card. 16 years of building my life from the ashes of their rejection. And now they sat before me, not with apologies or regret, but with hands outstretched, expecting tens of thousands of dollars. "Let me make sure I understand," I said carefully. "You want me to pay $50,000 a year for the college education of siblings I haven't seen since they were toddlers?" Mom's smile faltered. Their family, your brother and sister. I'm sorry, but I won't be doing that, I replied, my voice steady despite the anger building in my chest. Her expression shifted from expectant to incredulous. After everything we did for you, the absurdity of her statement might have made me laugh if it weren't so painful. What exactly did you do for me? Throw me away when I became inconvenient. I raised you for 16 years, she hissed, abandoning the friendly facade. This is how you repay me. I owe you nothing, I said quietly. I owe them nothing. Robert's face reddened. You ungrateful little. I think we're done here, I interrupted, standing to leave. Mom grabbed my wrist, her fingers digging in with surprising strength. You'll help your siblings or you're dead to me. I gently but firmly removed her hand. You made me dead to you 16 years ago when you chose them over me. Her scream echoed through the coffee shop as I walked toward the door. How dare you? After everything we sacrificed, you wouldn't have your precious company if I hadn't taught you to work hard. Customers turned to stare as Robert tried to quiet her, his own face contorted with rage. The manager stepped toward their table, concern evident in his expression. I left without looking back, but the confrontation was far from over. By that evening, my phone was flooded with texts and calls from both of them, alternating between guilt trips and threats. They found my company email and social media profiles, sending messages that became increasingly hostile when I didn't respond. The harassment escalated over the next 2 weeks. They showed up at my office unannounced, causing a scene in the lobby until security escorted them out. They contacted extended family members with fabricated stories about me refusing to help my destitute family. They even reached out to my grandparents, who promptly blocked their numbers after hearing their demands. When they began contacting my clients through LinkedIn claiming I was defrauding my own family, I'd had enough. I consulted with an attorney who documented the pattern of harassment and helped me file for a restraining order. We sent a formal cease and desist letter, which they ignored, continuing their campaign of harassment with seemingly no concern for potential consequences. The court hearing was set for a Tuesday morning in early June. I arrived with my attorney and a binder full of evidence, screenshots of messages, security footage from my office, witness statements from employees who'd seen their disruptive behavior. Mom and Robert arrived without legal representation, apparently confident in the righteousness of their position. When the judge asked them to explain their actions, Mom launched into a tearful speech about parental rights and family obligations. She claimed I'd abandoned them years ago, cutting off contact out of teenage rebellion. Robert nodded solemnly beside her, occasionally adding details to her fictional narrative. My attorney methodically dismantled their story, presenting the documentation of their harassment along with affidavits from my grandparents and aunt detailing the circumstances of my removal from their home. The judge's expression grew increasingly troubled as the truth emerged. So to clarify, the judge said, addressing my mother, you asked your child to leave your home at age 16, had no contact for 16 years, and then expected financial support for your other children's education. Mom's tearful confidence wavered under his incredulous gaze. He's successful now. He can afford to help his family. Miss Martin, the judge replied, the law doesn't recognize any obligation for siblings to financially support each other, particularly under these circumstances. The restraining order was granted, prohibiting them from contacting me or anyone associated with my business for a period of 3 years. As the judge announced his decision, Mom's face crumpled in shock and humiliation. For the first time since I'd known him, Robert looked afraid. The aftermath rippled through our extended family. Some relatives criticized me for being unforgiving, suggesting I should be the bigger person despite the harassment. Others expressed support, having witnessed Mom's behavior over the years. My grandparents and Aunt Sophia stood unwaveringly by my side, proud of me for protecting the life I'd built. 3 months after the court hearing, an unexpected email arrived. The sender was Grace Martin 98 at email.com with the subject line, "Can we talk?" The message was brief and tentative. You don't know me, but I'm your sister. I'd like to meet if you're willing. No mom, no dad, just me. I understand if you say no. I consulted my therapist again, cautious about reopening wounds or exposing myself to further manipulation. After careful consideration, I agreed to meet Grace at a public park the following weekend. She was tall and slender with Mom's dark hair and a nervous smile. She spotted me immediately, approaching with hesitant steps. We sat at a bench overlooking a small pond, awkward silence stretching between us until she finally spoke. "I found out what they did to you. The real story, not their version." She explained that she discovered letters from my grandparents in the attic while looking for old photos, correspondence that contradicted everything she'd been told about my departure. Confronting our parents had led to a blow-up where the truth finally emerged. "I'm sorry for what they did," she said softly, "and for what they tried to do now." Unlike Jackson, who had sided with our parents in their entitlement, Grace had been horrified by their behavior and their expectations. She'd moved out of their house, finding roommates and a job to support herself while attending community college rather than Cornell. "I don't want their help if it comes with those kinds of strings," she explained, "and I definitely didn't want help extorted from you." Over the following months, Grace and I built a cautious relationship based on mutual respect rather than obligation. I helped her with job applications and academic advice, but offered no financial support beyond occasional coffees and meals together. She never asked for more, understanding the boundaries necessary for our fragile connection to grow. 6 months after the restraining order was issued, I heard through family that Mom and Robert had been telling people I'd abandoned the family after becoming successful, apparently hoping to salvage their reputation. Grace reported they'd cut her off when she refused to stop seeing me, adding her to the list of children they discarded when convenient. By the 1-year mark of our reconnection, Grace had transferred to a state university on a partial scholarship, maintaining her independence while pursuing her education. We'd settled into a comfortable pattern of monthly dinners and regular texts, building the kind of relationship that should have been possible years earlier. My grandparents were initially wary of Grace, protective of me after everything that had happened. But her genuine remorse for our parents' actions and her determination to forge her own path eventually won them over. Watching them welcome her into their home for Thanksgiving dinner brought an unexpected sense of healing. Jackson remained aligned with our parents, occasionally sending hostile messages to Grace about her betrayal. She shared some with me, revealing the toxic environment I'd escaped years earlier. Whatever guilt I might have harbored for not helping with his education evaporated when I read his entitled angry words. The experience reinforced what I'd learned through years of therapy and rebuilding. Family isn't defined by blood or obligation. It's created through respect, support, and genuine care. My mother never understood that fundamental truth, seeing relationships only through the lens of what she could gain from them. I don't know if I'll ever fully heal from being discarded by the person who should have loved me most unconditionally. But I've built a life filled with people who choose to stand by me, not because of obligation or financial benefit, but because of who I am. My company continues to thrive. My relationship with my grandparents and aunt grows stronger each year. And now, unexpectedly, I have a sister who chose integrity over comfort. Some people have suggested I should feel smug about my success in the face of my mother's expectations. The truth is I don't. There's no satisfaction in watching someone reveal the worst parts of themselves, especially someone you once loved deeply. But there is profound peace in knowing I broke the cycle of conditional love that defined my childhood, creating boundaries that protect the life and relationships I've worked so hard to build. My mother taught me what family shouldn't be. Ironically, that painful lesson helped me recognize and cherish what family should be, a circle of mutual respect and genuine care that needs no court orders or legal threats to maintain. For that unintended gift, I suppose I should be grateful after all.